Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's LinkedIn Live. My name is Maria Belli, and I'm a part of the team here at Shepherd Pratt. Today, we're talking about what it's really like to build a career working with young people in behavioral health. At Shepherd Pratt, we offer so many opportunities for people who are passionate about making a difference. Everything from inpatient care to schools, day hospitals, and residential treatment. I am thrilled to be joined by Dr. Fola Akansanya. She leads our adolescent female unit as the service chief, and she brings not only deep clinical experience, but also a personal passion for supporting kids and teens. We'll chat about what makes this work so meaningful and what it takes to thrive while helping young people navigate some of life's toughest challenges. Welcome, Dr. Akansanya.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's good to be here.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. So let's dive in. To get us started, I want to hear a little bit about your background and how we got here. So, what inspired you to pursue this career path? Did you always want to work with young people?
Yeah, that's actually very interesting. I think right from like I don't even remember, probably when I was like maybe like 5, I don't know, 6,
Yeah.
I always talked about wanting to be a doctor. And I remember a couple of my parents' friends would be like, "Well, you should be a lawyer. You ask a lot of questions, you're very inquisitive." But it just kind of stuck with me. And then I also struggled with like been in and out of the hospital, kind of like a sick child. It wasn't like something chronic, but I just always had one illness or another. So I would go in and out of the hospital. And I did spend some time with my uncle at the time, who happened to be a pediatrician. And so I kind of self assigned him as my mentor. And, as time went on, I went into like middle school, high school. I continued to have that interest in medicine, and sometimes I would like volunteer every now and then in like a hospital, or even sometimes with like childcare. So it kind of stuck with me that I always wanted to work with kids. So after the graduation from high school, it's just kind of like it was a no-brainer. I applied to medical school. I got into medical school and I continued to pursue my career. And then, I mean, while in medical school, it was kind of like do I want to be a pediatrician? Do I want to be a psychiatrist? I kind of struggled a little bit with that. And then at some point, it became like daunting on me. And then I started to realize there was a lot of stigma around mental health,
Hmm.
particularly even access to care. And I geared towards like getting to know more about mental health and develop my interest in psychiatry. And then, I chose to become a psychiatrist with my goal to subsequently become a child psychiatrist, because that was, like I said, I always knew I wanted to work with kids. So I went into psychiatry knowing fully well that I was going to become a child psychiatrist. And so my goal is to just, I came in here to continue the advocacy of access to mental health and helping youths struggling with mental health.
I love it. How many people can say that when they were 5 years old and people asked them what they wanted to be when they grow up, that they actually did it, right? Like, that's
I
so
know,
cool.
I know. It's I don't know how to say it, but like it just kind of stuck with me.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, you clearly had some personal experiences too that really shaped, like, what you
Right.
wanted to do and build out of your career, and it's just that's awesome that you were able to actually turn that into something so wonderful.
Thank
And
you.
you mentioned, wanting to kind of address stigma. So, what are some of the common misconceptions people might have about working in behavioral health with young people?
So I mean, it is challenging when you're working with young people, and there's a lot of like people have different ideas, people have misconceptions. I would hear things like, "You're a child psychiatrist. Is there just like do kids have psychiatric issues?" And so what I've come to realize when I ask them further questions like, "What do you mean by that? Can you explain to me like your thought process?" And then a lot of people would be like, "Yeah, it's just privilege. I think it's privileged people that would tell you that they're depressed. There's nothing to
Mhm.
be depressed about as a child." And some people would say, "Oh, that's just normal teenage behavior." Or some people would be like, "They're just seeking attention because they didn't get their way with certain things." Some people would even chalk it down as a sign of weakness, and or even say that the symptoms are not genuine or their struggles are not genuine.
Mhm.
And a lot of times those misconceptions sometimes makes it very difficult to work with even families, because they come with the idea that this is not real, this is not genuine. And so some of them would be like, my child doesn't need to be on this medication or doesn't need to get therapy, they're gonna get over it. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely challenging, but as we continue in my career, and part of my advocacy is to continue to provide that psychoeducation and broaden and enlighten people more about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you said it can be challenging, but I have to imagine that the rewards outweigh that like big time when you change minds and reframe families and all that great stuff, right? It's
Yes,
yeah.
it is.
I love it. I love it. So let's talk a little bit about working amongst your teams because I think we know collaboration is key in behavioral health. Can you describe how your team works with others across Shepherd Pratt to support young people?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually one of the parts of why I love working at Shepherd Pratt. Because we have a large team. The hospital is a large hospital, psychiatric hospital system. And when you work on a team, it's very important because then you're able to deliver effective and comprehensive behavioral health care. You provide patients with like centered and holistic approach when you collaborate rather than just you, right?
Hmm.
So we're able to collaborate with different healthcare professionals within the system. It also allows us to be able to address psychiatric issues from a biological, psychological, and social standpoint, because then you're addressing all of those factors together, and that
Hmm.
improves the outcome eventually. So on like within the Shepherd Press system, particularly directly on my unit, I work with like support staff, nurses, social workers, other physicians, child psychiatrists, behavioral specialists, to mention a few. And then within the larger Shepherd Pratt system, we also tend to work with other members that are not primarily directly working on our unit, but
Hmm.
like programs like the day program, the Shepherd Pratt Residential Treatment Center, the Shepherd Pratt Schools, the psychiatric urgent care, the outpatient services. We're able to collaborate within all of the systems and kind of decide what a patient needs for the next level of care when they're leaving the inpatient unit. And this
Hmm.
this is a huge one because it allows continuity of care on the one system, and people are able to like kind of collaborate and think about, well, what's more beneficial, what's the next step. And it also improves compliance with patients in general, because then they're able to like say, okay, I'm going to Shepherd Prep for all of these things, and they're able to get that, and they're able to have large teamwork, people collaborating together.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
it just improves like the whole mental health care delivery to youths and other patients in general.
Right. And I have to imagine too, I'm making a lot of assumptions today, but I have to imagine that it also builds confidence for you and for other staff members because they have somebody to go to. If they, if you have something that you've never seen before, somebody within the system has seen it, right? I have to.
Yes, it's huge because even within the system itself, we have different specialties of psychiatry as well. So like if you're like struggling with like something that maybe is new to you or like seems like kind of a little bit more complicated, there's always another physician, there's always
Mhm.
another specialist to reach out to and say, hey, this seems to be going on. And everyone, I mean everyone that I've come across is always willing to help. Everyone just like jumps on the bandwagon. It's like, oh yeah, let's see what we can do.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen that from the outskirts a little bit too. It's really incredible.
Yeah.
So how do you approach building trust with kids and teens? Because I know that can be a challenge.
I mean, it is a challenge. It's a challenge because, like, I'm gonna go back a little bit to growing up. It's always like people are always like, "You're such a cute whisperer," and I'm like, I don't know, it's inbuilt, but that's very different from like dealing with like teenagers or even like other kids that have psychiatric issues, right?
Mhm.
I think that building trust does lay solid foundation for open communication. You when dealing with patients, especially youth, there's you require a lot of like significant amount of flexibility.
Mhm.
You have to be able to adapt to different age groups and different personalities, and the focus usually is on empathy, respect, and reliability. Like you want to show that you're empathetic towards their situation, you respect who they are as a person, and that you can be reliable. And this things have helped me from my like day-to-day work, right?
Yeah.
Like I do engage in a lot of active listening. I empathize. I validate people. I approach conversations most of the time in a non judgmental way. And I try to be honest and open. And more importantly, I try to create a consistent, supportive environment for the patients because a lot of times that even just that the consistency and support and safety net can go a long way.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And you kind of started diving into my next question. So, it has impacted your perspective, right? Working with these kids, it sounds like has impacted how you go about your personal life, and even, I mean, continuing your professional life and learning all these different things. So, how are there any other examples that you can provide about how that impact has happened?
Yeah, I mean, when you work in the psychiatric field like we've worked, you're very, very exposed to a lot of like situations. You hear a lot of things, and it kind of just shapes you in a different way. It gives you like it makes for me personally. I always say this. It's definitely made me a better physician, better parent, and even like a better human being overall because it does offer you the unique perspective to understand people and their stories and the lives that they live, right?
Mhm, mhm.
And depending on the developmental stage of who you're talking to, you're able to also see that family dynamic and the psychosocial factors that people live with, people are dealing with. Like, for example, when I understand my understanding of expectations for different developmental stages and age group and personality, helps me to be able to provide more education to that family and
Mhm.
say that some of those things that you're seeing from your child may be developmentally appropriate or is expected. And I've seen that sometimes when we say that or when we provide that education, it does reduce a lot of anxiety around some behaviors that the patients have at home that the family is concerned with. And
Mhm.
even with me, like it does help me understand when I see my child, for example, doing something and I'm like, okay, this is kind of okay, this is normal, take a little bit of deep breath
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
I do
um
that with my own child too. He's a three-nager, I call him. He has a lot of emotions, and being here at Shepherd Pratt has certainly helped with the deep breaths, the counting. I think it's just
right,
even on
right.
the sidelines, I get some of that.
Yeah,
So,
it does, and even sometimes like you being exposed to people's like family dynamics, it brings you to be more empathetic towards patients
mhm,
and even like towards other human beings in general because like you don't know
yeah,
what they're struggling with. Everyone has different struggles, and some of those struggles contribute to mental health, and sometimes even some of those struggles would contribute to our own treatment and how we deliver that care, right? Like how do the
mhm,
patients, how are they going to be compliant when they go home, when a parent tells you I don't have car, there's no way I can transport my child to this appointment. So all of those things, information, good information, but it also helps us like think about a more collaborative approach on how to deliver care to that patient.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So for those of you and others who are on the front lines, what advice do you have for facing really tough days and some of those difficult conversations you're talking about?
Yeah, 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 absolutely. So there are tough days. Not every day is a tough day. I just gotta say that there's
Yeah.
definitely days that um, it's like, oh, this is great. It's like a nice day. Oh, we should have lunch. But there are days that it can be tough. It can be demanding. You have to have a difficult conversation. Some of the things that have helped me are, I try to be clear in my communication. I'm open and I'm honest, right? I do a lot of active listening. You can't stress that enough. And in part of my listening involves like the things that I say and my tone, and I try to validate a lot. There are times even like I anticipate that I'm about to have a difficult conversation with this family, or I'm about to have a difficult conversation with this patient, and I try to anticipate that and I prepare for that in advance. So some of the things that has helped me, like I would try to choose the right time, the place. I'll prepare what I want to say in advance. Sometimes I would talk with other team members or even like a supervisor, right?
Mhm.
And then I would check my emotions. And when I'm like thinking about the right time to talk, it would be like, okay, I'm gonna make this phone call first thing in the morning when I get to work before my day becomes busy or I get exhausted or frustrated. And even when you're in that conversation, some emotions would come up that it's not expected. And some of the things that I do is I will set limits or boundaries during that conversation, again depending on who I'm dealing with, right? And
Mhm.
ultimately, though, you have to remember that some challenging conversations is because there's a problem that has been identified, right? So when I'm having those conversations, I try to focus on the problem that's being brought to me, focus on solution by offering choices, and that's just like what I try to do. It doesn't help a large percentage of the time, yes, but sometimes it's not always like that, and
Oh.
sometimes it's in understanding and saying that, okay, this conversation is not going the way it's supposed to be, I can come back to it.
Mhm.
But like, I always leave this with everybody because I learned that in our leadership academy here at Shepherd Pratt.
Yeah.
But the thing that I always leave with people is that you have to remember that clear communication is kind. So when you're very clear and precise with your conversation, you are being kind. You may not know that, but that's what it is.
Yeah. I have to emphasize that clear communication is kind. I'm going to bring that back to my own personal life. I love it because it's like whether something's good or bad or somewhere in between, just be straight up. Just tell people what's going on. Have it set in your mind before you approach the person. And I'm sure that's a skill that you've had to build throughout the years. And I'm sure things haven't gone perfectly in certain situations. And like you said, reaching out to teammates for support. I think that's I just love that. I'm gonna get it tattooed on my body. No, I'm not. I'm not. Um, so it is important for you all to keep building those skills. And it's the behavioral health field is constantly evolving. And so
Mhm.
staying up to date through continuing education and training opportunities can make a really big difference. Can you explain to me some of the continuing education benefits that team members can access at Shepherd Pratt?
Yeah. So here at Shepherd, we do have multiple, like, there's access to multiple opportunities to continue to advance your education. I think we do have a Center for Professional Education, and on that, like in that department, there's access to live courses, on-demand courses, live ground rounds,
Hmm.
um, even live and on-demand workshops as well. All of those things are like most of those topics there are like relating to mental health, and most of the professionals, psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, can benefit from all of those things. So it's not like when you go to the that department, it's not like the access or the courses you see would not apply to you. A lot of times it's very applicable to whatever it is that you're looking for, and it's like a wide variety of topics as well.
Yeah.
I've also here at Shepherd, we do have tuition reimbursement. I don't know how much it is. I know I kind of have an idea, but I think it may vary per department and who you
Hmm.
are. But I do know that the tuition reimbursement, I think a lot of misconception is that you can only use it for college or like, but there are other things you can use it for. Like I had
Hmm.
a colleague of mine that started to learn Spanish, and she was able to use that to pay for Spanish classes. She didn't have to enroll in a college or anything, but it was just something that was going to contribute to her delivering a better patient care. And
Hmm.
the hospital, they jumped into that and they paid for it. So yeah, it's that's a huge opportunity as well. Also, unlike the clinical standpoint, we do engage in monthly case conferences and journal clubs that allows us to keep up to date on evolving treatments and new articles and like care
Hmm.
improvement of care in psychiatric field.
Yeah. So a huge culture of continuous learning for sure. Just always keeping up to date. I love it. It's wonderful.
Up to date. Mhm.
So before we wrap up, is there any final insight or advice you'd like to provide us, leave us with?
Um, I do love working at Shepherd Pratt. I'm always like it's like one of like it's it's very rewarding, and it
Yeah.
brings a lot of joy and smile to my face when you when we treat the patients and their families, and they're just so grateful and they tell you how things are getting better. It can be challenging sometimes, as we talked about earlier. It can be complex, but again, the focus usually is always at the end, which is like the
Yep.
rewarding part of the job and the privilege you have and the opportunity to even care for this patient population.
Hmm.
And, you know, the biggest thing I would say is that it requires a significant amount of open and honest communication, patience, understanding, empathy, flexibility, and support. And support can be both ways, right? Supporting others, but also seeking support, which
Yeah.
I will say we do have enormous amount of that within the system. So,
Fabulous. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience and wisdom with us today. And thank you to everyone who joined this conversation.
thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having
Thank
me.
you.